You're listening to the continuation of Cross-Section of a Human Heart, a memoir of early adulthood, by Abi Wurdeman, read for you by the author. Each story in this book can stand alone, but if you prefer to listen to them in order, you can find links to previous chapters in the description below. Seven. That time I finally committed to a cable plan. I discovered Nickelodeon through a Pizza Hut kids meal I ordered when I was 6. My soda came in a plastic cup decorated with what I assumed was ectoplasm until I failed to find Slimer and instead discovered something I would later learn was called a doo-wop-osaurus. I was confused, mystified. I studied the bubbly orange letters spelling Nickelodeon, trying to make meaning out of the weirdest word I'd ever heard, but there was no meaning to be found. I thought this was a massive marketing fail on the part of Pizza Hut. No one knows what a Nickelodeon is, friends. Stop trying to make Nickelodeon a thing. Over the months and years that followed, I would, of course, learn what Nickelodeon was. I would learn that it was a magical channel that had programming designed for me all day long. And the shows, Eureka's Castle, Hey Dude, Salute Your Shorts, Doug, Rugrats, Nickelodeon it got me. What made Nickelodeon doubly sacred was the fact that we never had it in our home. These incredible shows I discovered were special occasion shows for me, something I only got to watch when I visited a friend's house or in those miraculous moments at Grandma's house when I convinced my brothers to click away from MTV for 15 minutes. As an adult, I understand why we didn't have Nickelodeon in our home. Cable television was still not that common. We had plenty to watch on regular broadcast TV, and it made loads more sense for my parents to save that money for our yearly family vacations so their kids could stand in the headwaters of the Mississippi and pretend to be George Washington in a D.C. tavern, that was me, and cry their frantic heads off when giant Norwegian trolls scared the shit out of them at Epcot, also me. But my kid brain did not put all of this together. My kid brain only knew we didn't have something most of my friends had, and even though my parents explained about budgets and how not everybody chooses to use their money the same way, I could only manage to assume that we didn't have Nickelodeon because we were inherently people who didn't get to have Nickelodeon. That some families get to be Nickelodeon families, while others are destined to live a half-enjoyed existence. There are 2 kinds of people in this world. Just kidding, there are like a million kinds of people in this world, but one of those kinds is the type who over-identifies with the circumstances they are given in youth. That would be me. I was a lower middle-class Midwesterner who came from a practical family and did not have Nickelodeon. No one in my life ever asked me to consider that a permanent identity. I did it myself. I was afraid of being caught thinking I was too big for the pond I was swimming in, afraid people might think I didn't admire my given pond as deeply as I admired a lake or an ocean. I recently discussed this feeling with a friend of mine who grew up in a similar community. As always, I stumbled to express myself. It's that nagging, it's like a feeling that no one's telling me I can't or shouldn't dream big, but I also don't want anyone to see me as someone who thinks of big as, like, my friend nodded and took a drag off of her e-cig. It's the who do you think you are feeling. Yes. My response came out like an exhale, like I'd been holding my breath, waiting to be understood for a good 3 decades. Who do you think you are? And the thing that kills me is that 90% of the time, the only person asking me that is myself. As I entered young adulthood, I couldn't shake the voice. I wouldn't take bold steps unless there were enough external voices telling me it didn't make sense to hold back. I held onto those voices like a bibliography to back up my ambition, so if anyone suggested I was getting too big for my britches, I could cite all the sources that had led me to believe my britches were made to stretch. In college, I didn't switch from an education major to a theater major until 2 professors, 2 theater majors, and a professional actor told me I was crazy for not pursuing an acting career. When I auditioned for UCLA's MFA program just for the practice and accidentally gave a great performance, I still didn't follow through with the application because, as I told friends, the odds of getting into UCLA are so slim it'd be like throwing away the $30 application fee. No one disagreed, so I assumed I was right. And it never occurred to me that I could belong in Los Angeles until someone who lived there suggested I might. That someone would be my brother Phil. There are millions of kinds of people in this world. One of those kinds is Phil. While I was waiting around for permission to be bold, my older brother Phil was charging his dreams like a bull, studying screenwriting in Miami and then moving to Los Angeles with no connections and no relationships more intimate than that dude who sat behind me in that one class. He had been living in Burbank for 6 months when he called to tell me his roommate would be moving out the same month my Bridgework tour ended. The room was mine if I wanted it. I pretended to deliberate for a couple days, but I knew my answer. I did want it. I wanted to be out there, and being invited meant someone, at least one person, didn't think it was unheard of for me to try to make it happen in a city already overloaded with ambition. I caravanned from Lubbock to LA with my parents, my father driving their SUV, my mother reading aloud to me to keep me entertained while I drove. I don't remember what she read, probably because I wasn't listening. All I could focus on was the overwhelming anticipation of taking a chance on something big. I was moving to Los Angeles. I was pursuing my career like a serious professional. I had books about making it, a stack of headshots, and a room 20 miles from the ocean. My life was beginning now. That's how I felt on the road. When we pulled onto Warner Boulevard, the thrill within me tightened into a thick knot in my stomach. Who did I think I was? Who the hell did I think I was, moving in literally across the street from the Warner Brothers lot? The iconic water tower was practically in my front yard. Talented, wealthy, successful people were defining Hollywood on the other side of the boulevard, and here I was with nothing but a few books about making it, a stack of discount headshots, and a fear of the wild LA freeways that I'd have to take to get to the ocean. As Phil gave us a tour of the city, a quiet panic set in. I was uncharacteristically silent during dinner, and my father, who I suspect was dealing with a small dose of panic himself, asked me about 6 times if I was okay. Yeah, I said. I'm just taking it in. And by taking it in, I meant losing my absolute shit because I have no business being here. That feeling stuck for the first 6 months. New acquaintances would ask what brought me to Los Angeles, and my response always came out like a miserable apology for my existence. I'm trying to act. My brother was already here, so I thought I'd try it. I don't know. We'll see what happens. This answer was the worst, loaded with insecurity and implying an indifference I didn't actually feel. I just couldn't bring myself to say, I'm an actor, and leave it at that. I wanted people to know that I knew how hard it would be, that I knew the competition was tight, I knew what I looked like, I knew all about star quality, and that mine was limited. I wanted them to know I wasn't another naive blonde expecting to be Scarlett Johansson. My brother witnessed this. He witnessed my reluctance to admit ambition and the way I left for auditions with the slumped shoulders of someone who's declared defeat before even showing up for the battle. And he was not having that shit. I think I was subjected to more lectures in that first 6-month period than I have ever been in my entire life. I was getting scolded on the weekly for sneaking around my new city like a skittish mouse, for assuming I didn't belong, for failing to recognize that my fellow Angelinos were as human and as uncertain as I was. I get it, he said. I know that when you first get out into the world, you kind of assume everyone else has it figured out, like they're doing this bold thing because they're super brilliant. But most of them are not super brilliant. They're either delusional or they're brave enough to try something hard even though they might fail. Everyone is just figuring it out as they go. I was a contender here, he told me, and I needed to start contending. I am here to tell you, if you share a living space with someone who loudly, furiously believes in you, you will eventually believe in yourself too. Guaranteed. I started to believe it wasn't insane for me to think I could build a career in Los Angeles, and I was surprised to discover that when I told people I wanted to work in the industry, everyone nodded like it made perfect sense. I started to set loftier goals and shoot for the best-case scenario. I eventually gave up acting, stay tuned for more on that, in favor of a screenwriting partnership with Phil. The road to success in Hollywood is long for most of us, and there were still days when my certainty slipped and Phil had to remind me that stupider people than us have screenwriting careers. But I soon became someone who wasn't afraid to admit that she had ambition and believed there was a place card with her name on it at this seemingly exclusive table. We finally got our first television writing credit, a freelance episode of The Loud House, a hit animated show at Nickelodeon. We arrived for our first day working with the staff and waited in the lobby for the script coordinator to usher us up to the writer's room. I sat looking around the magical, cartoony campus of Nick Animation Studios. I sat on something I was 83% sure was a chair, you're never totally sure in that place, and noticed the giant bubbly orange letters on the wall across from me. Nickelodeon. At this point, I'd been to this studio 6 times for 6 different meetings, and it wasn't until today that I remembered staring at this foreign word on my Pizza Hut Kids Cup. This exclusive club. This thing I thought could never belong to me just because I didn't have it already. The script coordinator appeared in front of us with a warm smile and walked us to the elevator. A moment later, we were in our first ever writer's room, the head writer telling us he wanted us to write one of the ideas we'd pitched. Somewhat poetically, he'd chosen the story about the little sister who was afraid to be ambitious, and the older sibling who taught her she had every right to dream big. Your emotional game plan. Much smarter people than I will give you great advice for creating a common-sense plan to make your dream come true. So I'm going to keep my trap shut about that because I don't know what I'm talking about. What may be just as important, especially if you're like me and really good at psyching yourself out of moving forward, is creating an emotional plan, anticipating the roadblocks that will inevitably crop up inside your own head and heart. Find a quiet, comfortable place, settle in with your beverage of choice, and let's get cracking on a psychological plan for your personal version of world domination. Figure out what you want. It's okay if you don't know for sure yet. It takes some people years to find the dream that feels like a perfect fit. The important thing is that you work toward figuring out what you want. Think about what brings you joy. Imagine the life that feels as natural to you as your own skin. Write that down. Practice saying it out loud, even if you're afraid it sounds stupid. Keep saying it and saying it and saying it. Never stop saying it. Identify what your emotional needs will be as you pursue your dream. Everyone is different, so there's no right or wrong answer here. Some people need a swift kick in the pants when they feel stuck. Others are more motivated by gentle encouragement. What works for you is a personality thing, not a statement on your resilience. So answer these questions for yourself honestly and without judgment. What do you need when you fail? You succeed? You feel stuck? You feel unmotivated? You feel afraid or inferior? Once you have those things figured out, come up with a plan for getting what you need. Who in your life can offer you the support you're looking for? What movie or book or quote always inspires you? Is there an experience that helps you get where you need to be? Meditation or exercise or a little time in nature? Figure out how to express what you need. Most of us have someone in our lives who is close enough to see us in our weaker moments. Sometimes this person gives us the kind of support they would want, not realizing that same approach might not be effective for us. If you have someone like that, figure out now how you're going to lovingly, graciously communicate what you need. When I'm freaking out, it helps so much just to hear that you believe in me. Or, it means so much that you believe in me, but when you gush about my talents, I get more overwhelmed. It's totally cool to just say, I'm sure it'll be fine, and then change the subject. Now that you've learned to forgive your own insecurities and made a plan for self-care, It's time to make a plan for getting tough. The most effective way to build confidence is to get work done, even bad work, even if you're still feeling small or freaked out. Productivity feels good. Walking directly into the storm is empowering. Work takes your mind off of your fear and puts it on something you care about. Not to mention, the more you do the thing you love, the better you become, making your crazy dream feel less crazy. Come up with some tips you know will help you get to work even when your heart is trying to run flailing Muppet style in the opposite direction. Some ideas to get you started. Research your role models. Find the aspects of their life stories that would be an insecurity for you. Maybe they went to a college no one's heard of, or they switched career paths late in life, or they had a sibling who succeeded years before they did. Remember that everyone can come up with a reason to doubt themselves. Remind yourself it will not always be as hard as it is right now. You get better, and the work gets easier. Be bored with your own fears. When you worry about being the dumbest person in med school, recall the 5 million times you already worried about this and actively think, ugh, this story again? You've been over it. It's old. It's annoying. Let it go. Hi, I'm Abi Wurdeman, author of Cross Section of the Human Heart and the voice that you've been listening to this whole time. I am releasing a story from the book every Sunday in audio right here on YouTube, so make sure you hit the subscribe button if you want to catch the next one. All of these videos also come with a little bonus author commentary, follow-up stories, whatever I'm in the mood for, whatever the story inspires. So that's what's happening to you right now, is you are now in the author commentary. Someday these author commentaries will also come with a more interesting background. We're still in the process of arranging our home. We're getting very close, but there's still more to do with my office. So, give me another 2 or 3 videos, and eventually there will at least be some like fun stenciling going on back there. But right now you got a blank wall and me and this little cabinet and this guy who I wanted to show you. So this is a black-eyed Susan, who is also a cat. I think it's a black-eyed Susan. I think she told me. Anyway, the reason that I'm showing it to you is I just unpacked it, and it was made by Angie from the last story. She's wildly creative. She does all these. She does a lot of crafts and sells them, and also makes them for fun and gives them as gifts. So this is amazing, and it brings me a lot of joy. And there are a lot more amazing things like that coming once we start, once we get to the decorating phase, because those are the boxes that the little Angie things are mostly packed away in. But I just wanted to show you because she's brilliant, and this cat flower is awesome. Anyway, the follow-up for today's story, though, is I wanted to talk about how that lesson that I learned in my 20s about learning how to walk through my chosen professional spaces, trusting that I had value in that space and trusting that I could own my ambition. I was gonna say own my ambition and trust that other people believed I had a right to. But I think sort of the next step up from that is not needing other people to believe I had a right to, right? But, one thing at a time. My point is that journey, I wanted to talk about how that lesson really led me to where I am in my author career today as an indie author, basically. So the years that I spent screenwriting with my brother were awesome. And I also want to be, I'm using the past tense, but I'm kind of using it lightly because I don't necessarily assume that those are over. This, careers are fluid. Where you are, what you prioritize at any given moment, it's going to change. And I did really love screenwriting. I love screenwriting with Phil, and I loved the experiences that we got to have because of it. Just the people that we got to meet, and we got to experience the things that make
writing for film and television so satisfying, which isn't just seeing your work produced, but seeing what your work becomes when you have collaboration from all these other really talented artists who are willing, who are willing to invest in that vision, who see what you're going for and say, oh, okay, I can build on that. I can add my own, I can personalize it in a way where we're still creating something that's out. And that is the ultimate satisfaction, to see your work on the screen, still be able to recognize it as the story you wanted to tell, but see it made even better because of what other people contributed to it. It doesn't always go that way in Hollywood. We're lucky enough that everything we've had produced has been some version of that. But it doesn't always work that way, which brings me to what I want to explain about the experience, which is why I started to just kind of get burned out with all of the creative barriers that are in Hollywood. Because, well, and in traditional publishing too, but not, I mean, I haven't, to the best of my knowledge, I've never attempted to publish anything traditionally. But you see, for a writer, or for many of us anyway, the core goal, the most important and valuable part of the experience is being able to reach out to a stranger with your story and say, this is how I see the world. How do you see it? Can we relate? Can we connect here? Is there something in my human experience that resonates for you and yours? And that's true even when we're writing fiction, because we can't write a character without filtering it through our own emotional experience, through our own understanding of what the world is and who people are and what we need and what breaks us and what builds us. And it's so amazing to have this medium where we can share that with strangers, and we can continuously create these works that help people understand one another and remind each other that in many ways we're still all essentially the same. And that's something that's especially important to me right now, at a time where I think a lot of people, including myself sometimes, are navigating the world where we see strangers, and the first thought is, how are you a threat to me? Are you with me? Or are you with them? Where, are you? And it's such a divisive way of thinking to immediately gravitate towards, how are we different? How are you going to hurt me? Anyway. So for me, storytelling is very important, and not just storytelling itself. The process of writing is always fun, especially when I was writing with my brother. But to me, the really fulfilling part, the part that I really needed more of, was being able to actually share my work. And that's hard to do when you're writing for film and television, not just because of the gatekeepers. I think we go in hoping that the way to build a career, that the secret to being able to share your work is to write a really great script. And that's not enough. It's very often not enough. Sometimes it works out, but there are so many other things that prevent your movie from being made, or your episode from being made, or prevent you from getting on that writing staff, or whatever it is you're trying to do. Phil and I have sold multiple projects that just never saw the light of day because something falls apart in production, something that's out of our hands, something we can't come in and fix. I also have had fellow writers who've gone through the entire process. They worked so hard to get something they love made, and they convinced someone to make it and got actors on board, or were able to get on that writing staff or whatever. But by the time it actually aired, or it actually, premiered, it wasn't theirs anymore. Like most of their words had been changed, or it had been edited to the extent that it's just not even the same story. It's really difficult to make. It's really difficult to complete that journey of having a story that you want to share and then being able to actually share it. And for me personally, I reached a point where I was just too frustrated with the barriers. I just wanted to connect with people. I didn't need to be big. I didn't need to be famous. I didn't need to be making a lot of money off of it or just have the phone ringing off the hook. I just needed to be able to find the people who would connect with what I wrote. I also really missed books. I love film and television, but books were definitely my first love. And I feel the way that I feel in a bookstore or in a library or just around people who are talking about books, whether I've read them or not, is not the same as any other feeling in my life. It feels fully like coming home. It just gets me on a high that lasts with me for the rest of the day. So I felt like, why not spend time in this world? And why not write my books and then actually put them out there, actually give them a chance to find the people who connect with them, even if it's not that many people. And this kind of all happened so gradually that it really wasn't until I was recording this story that I realized what a massive shift that is from who I was and what I could see for myself at 24. Because being an indie author, removing all of the gatekeepers, is saying, I don't care if all of the people who supposedly know best think that this book should exist or not. I'm not even going to consult them. I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to say to the world, hey, I wrote this and I think it's worth sharing. I think it's good enough. I think I'm good enough. It's still really scary. So I don't want to say this as like, oh, now that I'm doing this, that's proof that I'm not afraid anymore and I don't care what people think. Of course I don't. Every time I put a book out, I'm afraid that people are going to read it. I want them to read it, but I'm also really afraid they're going to read it. And then, what if they find out that I'm a phony, that I'm not good enough, that I shouldn't have done this? I will say that I have lost a little bit of the fear in the beginning of having to deal with the reputation of self-publishing, because I think that it doesn't have the same stigma it used to have, this assumption that if you're self-publishing, it must be because you're not writing a good book. It's because no one would buy your book. No one signed off on it. I think that the reputation is changing because we've seen a lot of great writers come out of indie publishing, and we've seen indie publishing change the industry, change the trends and what gets published, which kind of brings me back to my original point of trusting that your work has value and that you have a space here, and that if you make it, someone's going to show up for it. There was a time, I think there's probably still a time now, but I think there was a time where it was much harder to get, to publish queer romance. But I think you had these queer romance authors that were just like, screw it, I'm just going to put it out there myself. Or I'm going to write fan fiction. And the audiences showed up. People who had been hungry for this genre that reflected them for so long were finally getting it. And then that shows the people with all the money making all the big decisions like, oh, we missed something. We missed something here. So on that note, I guess the moral of the story, if we're doing morals, is we have to trust ourselves. If we have something we can feel compelled to create, whether it's art or a business or a new initiative within the job that we work at, whatever it is, we have to at least give ourselves that chance and know that if it's something that we feel good about, it's something that's important to us, there's a pretty good chance that it's going to matter to someone else too. And on that note, if you happen to connect with my storytelling, please come back and see me again next week. Next week's story is something like that time I sat there while people fell apart. It's the most downer story in the book. And it is the one I was most terrified to put out into the world. But as is often the case with these things, it's also one of the ones that people remember and resonate with the most. So anyway, if you want to make sure you catch that, subscribe, and don't be afraid to toss a little like my way too if you're feeling it. Otherwise, I will see you next week. Thanks so much for being here.